The science of how the brain learns languages. Introduction/hook, midnight to 0:45. What if I told you that your brain is already designed to learn new languages? And what if the biggest obstacle isn't your age, your memory, or your intelligence, but simply how you've been trying to learn? Have you ever met someone who seems to pick up languages effortlessly while others struggle for years? Is there a special language gene that only some people have? Or does the human brain use a hidden learning system that most of us never understand? Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating science of how the brain learns languages. You'll discover what happens inside your brain when you hear a new word, why children learn languages so quickly, whether adults can become fluent too, and the surprising habits that can dramatically speed up language learning. By the end of this video, you'll never look at language learning the same way again. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Your brain is a language machine, 0:45 to 2:30. Before you learned your first word, your brain was already preparing for language. Even before birth, babies can hear sounds from the outside world. Scientists have discovered that newborn babies can recognize their mother's voice and even distinguish the rhythm of their native language. Think about that for a moment. Before taking their first breath, their brains are already collecting language information. Amazing, right? The human brain contains specialized networks that process speech, sounds, grammar, meaning, and communication. Several important areas work together. The auditory cortex processes sounds. Broca's area helps produce speech. Wernicke's area helps understand language. The hippocampus stores new memories. The prefrontal cortex helps with attention and learning. When you hear a new language, these regions become highly active, communicating with one another at incredible speed. In many ways, learning a language is like building new roads inside your brain. The more often those roads are used, the stronger they become. This process is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and create new neural connections. And here's the exciting part. Neuroplasticity doesn't stop in childhood. Your brain can continue learning languages throughout your entire life. Chapter 2. How a new word enters your brain, 2:30 to 4:30. Let's imagine you're learning Spanish and hear the word casa. At first, it's just a sound. Your auditory system detects the sound waves. Next, your brain tries to identify patterns. Does this word sound familiar? Have you heard it before? Then your memory system begins searching for meaning. You discover that casa means house. Now something amazing happens. Your brain links the sound, the spelling, the meaning, the image of a house, the context where you learned it. Each connection creates additional neural pathways. The more pathways attached to a word, the easier it becomes to remember. This is why simply memorizing vocabulary lists often fails. Your brain remembers information better when it's connected to emotions, images, stories, and real-life experiences. Think about it. Which is easier to remember? Or a funny story involving that word? Most people remember the story. That's because the brain loves meaningful connections. Chapter 3. Why children learn languages so fast, 4:30 to 6:30. One of the biggest mysteries in neuroscience is how quickly children learn language. A toddler can absorb thousands of words without studying grammar books or memorizing vocabulary lists. Why? Researchers believe children's brains are extraordinarily flexible. Their neural networks are constantly growing and adapting. Scientists often refer to early childhood as a critical period for language acquisition. During this period, the brain is highly sensitive to language input. Children also have several advantages. They hear language constantly. They aren't afraid of making mistakes. They learn through play. They receive immediate feedback. They focus on communication rather than perfection. Now here's something surprising. Adults often know more about language rules than children. Yet children become fluent faster. Why? Because children prioritize communication. Adults often prioritize avoiding mistakes. And fear can interfere with learning. So here's a question for you. How much faster could you learn if you stopped worrying about sounding perfect? Chapter 4. Can adults really become fluent? 6:30 to 8:30. Many people believe a common myth. If you didn't learn a language as a child, it's too late. This is completely false. Research shows adults can absolutely become fluent. In fact, adults possess several advantages. They have stronger reasoning skills. They understand learning strategies. They can analyze grammar. They possess larger vocabularies in their native language. The challenge isn't capability. It's consistency. Adult brains learn differently, not worse. The biggest issue is often limited exposure. A child may hear language for 10 to 12 hours daily. An adult learner might practice only 15 minutes. Imagine exercising for 15 minutes a day and expecting the same results as someone training all day long. Language learning works similarly. The brain adapts according to exposure. The more meaningful exposure you receive, the faster your neural networks strengthen. So if you've ever thought, I'm too old to learn a language, science says otherwise. Chapter 5. The memory system behind language learning, 8:30 to 10:30. Why do you sometimes learn a word today and forget it tomorrow? The answer lies in memory formation. When information first enters your brain, it sits in short-term memory. Without reinforcement, much of it disappears. Is this information important? If the answer is no, it gets discarded. If the answer is yes, it moves into long-term memory. This process happens largely during sleep. That's right. Sleep is one of the most powerful language learning tools available. During deep sleep, the brain strengthens important neural connections and organizes newly learned information. Studies consistently show that adequate sleep improves learning, memory retention, and recall. Lack of sleep can lead to poor concentration, forgetfulness, slower learning. So if you're staying up late studying vocabulary and sacrificing sleep, you may actually be hurting your progress. Sometimes the smartest study strategy is simply getting enough rest. Chapter 6. Factors that slow language learning, 10:30 to 12 o'clock. Several factors can make language learning more difficult. These include chronic stress, sleep deprivation, lack of practice, multitasking, poor concentration, fear of making mistakes. Stress deserves special attention. When stress levels remain high, the body releases cortisol. Excessive cortisol can interfere with memory formation and learning efficiency. This doesn't mean occasional stress is harmful, but chronic stress can make language acquisition significantly harder. Symptoms of excessive stress may include difficulty concentrating, mental fatigue, forgetfulness, reduced motivation, trouble retaining information. Managing stress is not just good for health, it's also good for language learning. Chapter 7. Brain-boosting strategies for learning languages, 12 to 1400 hours. Now let's discuss evidence-based strategies that help the brain learn faster. 1. Use spaced repetition. Instead of cramming, review information at increasing intervals. This strengthens long-term memory. 2. Learn through context. Learn words inside sentences and stories. Context creates stronger neural connections. 3. Speak early. Don't wait until you're perfect. Speaking activates multiple brain systems simultaneously. 4. Listen every day. Even 15 to 20 minutes of daily listening helps your brain recognize patterns. 5. Exercise regularly. Physical activity improves blood flow to the brain and supports cognitive performance. 6. Prioritize sleep. Sleep helps consolidate language memories. 7. Make learning emotional. The brain remembers emotional experiences better than boring facts. Use movies, music, stories, and conversations. 8. Be consistent. 10 minutes daily often beats 3 hours once a week. Remember, the brain rewards repetition, not intensity. Chapter 8. Myths about language learning, 14 to 1500 hours. Let's quickly bust some popular myths. Myth 1. I'm too old to learn a language. False. Adults can learn languages throughout life. Myth 2. You need a special talent. False. Consistency matters more than talent. Myth 3. Grammar is the most important thing. Not entirely. Communication and comprehension come first. Myth 4. You must live abroad. False. Many fluent speakers learn successfully without moving to another country. Myth 5. Making mistakes means you're failing. Actually, mistakes help the brain learn. Every mistake provides valuable feedback. Conclusion and final takeaways. The science is clear. Your brain was built to learn language. Every new word creates new neural connections. Every conversation strengthens those pathways. Every day of consistent practice reshapes your brain through neuroplasticity. Whether you're 15 or 75, your brain remains capable of learning, adapting, and growing. The secret isn't having a perfect memory. The secret isn't extraordinary talent. The secret is consistent exposure, meaningful practice, quality sleep, stress management, and the courage to make mistakes. So here's today's challenge. What language would you learn if you knew you couldn't fail? Write your answer in the comments below. And if you're already learning a language, tell us which one and how long you've been studying it. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss future videos about brain science, health, learning, and human potential. Thanks for watching. And remember, every language you learn doesn't just change how you communicate, it literally changes your brain. See you in the next video. Did you like this feature? The Science of How the Brain Learns Languages, Part 2. But the brain doesn't learn a language by memorizing words alone. In fact, scientists have discovered that the brain builds entire networks of meaning, sound, and memory every time you learn a new language. Counterclockwise arrows button, why repetition changes the brain. Every time you hear, read, speak, or write a new word, brain cells called neurons communicate with each other. The more often these neurons fire together, the stronger their connections become. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's amazing ability to change and adapt through experience. Think of it like creating a path through a forest. The first time you walk through, it's difficult. But after walking the same route many times, the path becomes clear and easy to follow. Language learning works the same way inside the brain. The more you practice, the stronger and faster those language pathways become. Speaking ahead, why speaking out loud helps. Many learners spend hours reading vocabulary lists but struggle to speak. That's because speaking activates multiple brain regions at the same time. When you speak, your brain must. White heavy check mark, recall the word. White heavy check mark, understand its meaning. White heavy check mark, plan the sentence. White heavy check mark, control the muscles of the mouth and tongue. This intense brain activity strengthens learning much more than passive studying alone. Research shows that actively using a language helps create stronger long-term memories. Sleeping, face the hidden power of sleep. Here's something surprising. Your brain continues learning even while you sleep. During sleep, the brain organizes information collected during the day. Important memories are strengthened while less useful information is removed. Studies have found that people often remember new vocabulary better after a good night's sleep. So if you're studying a language, sleep is not wasting time. It's actually part of the learning process. Musical note, why music can improve language learning. Have you ever noticed how easily song lyrics get stuck in your head? That's because music activates emotional and memory centers in the brain. Rhythm and melody help the brain recognize patterns, making words easier to remember. Many language learners improve pronunciation and vocabulary by listening to songs in their target language. The brain loves patterns, and music provides plenty of them. Glowing star, the amazing result. Over time, your brain becomes faster at recognizing sounds, understanding grammar, and recalling words. Some studies even suggest that learning another language may improve attention, memory, problem-solving skills, and mental flexibility. In other words, every new language you learn is also a workout for your brain. Clapperboard outro. The human brain is one of the most powerful learning machines ever discovered. Every word you learn, every conversation you practice, and every mistake you make helps build stronger neural connections. So if learning a language feels difficult, remember, your brain isn't failing. It's rewiring itself for a new way of thinking. And that's exactly how language learning works. To be continued, Part 3. Can learning a new language change your brain forever? Brain sparkles. Brain, the Science of How the Brain Learns Languages, Part 3. Globe showing Europe, Africa. Can learning a new language change your brain forever? The answer is, yes, it can. Scientists using brain scans have discovered that learning a second language can physically change certain parts of the brain. These changes are especially noticeable in areas responsible for memory, attention, decision-making, and communication. The more a language is used, the stronger these brain networks become. This is another example of the brain's incredible ability to adapt and reorganize itself throughout life. Building construction, the brain builds new connections. When you learn a language, the brain doesn't simply store words like files in a computer. Instead, it creates and strengthens connections between millions of neurons. Each new word becomes linked to sounds, meanings, emotions, images, and experiences. Over time, these connections become faster and more efficient. That's why words that once felt difficult can eventually come to mind automatically. Baby, why children learn languages faster. You may have heard that children learn languages more easily than adults. There is some truth to this. A child's brain is highly flexible and rapidly forming new neural connections. Young children are especially skilled at recognizing speech sounds and language patterns. However, this does not mean adults cannot become fluent. Adults often learn vocabulary, grammar rules, and reading skills faster because they already have strong learning strategies and life experience. The brain remains capable of learning throughout life. Direct hit the role of attention. One of the biggest factors in language learning is attention. The brain learns best when it is actively focused. If you're distracted while studying, the brain may not store information effectively. Research suggests that short, focused study sessions are often more effective than long periods of distracted learning. Quality of practice matters just as much as quantity. Grinning face with sweat while making mistakes helps learning. Many language learners fear making mistakes. But from a scientific perspective, mistakes are actually valuable. When you make an error and then correct it, the brain receives important feedback. This process helps strengthen the correct neural pathway. In other words, mistakes are not just part of learning. They help drive learning. Every correction teaches the brain what works and what doesn't. Puzzle piece how the brain becomes more efficient. As language skills improve, the brain begins to use less effort for tasks that once felt challenging. Words are recognized faster. Grammar becomes more automatic. Listening comprehension improves. This process is known as automaticity. The brain gradually shifts from slow, conscious processing to fast, efficient language use. That's why fluent speakers can understand and respond almost instantly. Sparkle's final thought. Learning a language is much more than memorizing vocabulary. It is a process of reshaping brain networks, strengthening memory systems, improving attention, and building new ways of thinking. Every practice session creates small changes inside the brain. And over time, those small changes can lead to remarkable results. Clapperboard outro. The science is clear. Your brain is designed to learn. With repetition, attention, sleep, and consistent practice, it can adapt to new languages at almost any age. So the next time you learn a new word, remember, you're not just learning a language. You're changing your brain.